Welcome, friends, to the seventh webinar in our webinar series on media response to crises. So we are exactly at the midpoint of our webinar series organized by Press Club Kolkata in collaboration with UNICEF Office for West Bengal. Today's topic is climate change, development perspectives, and media's priorities. And we have three very distinguished panelists from three very different fields. We have Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat from MICA. We have Mr. Jayanta Basu, a very well-known, a very senior environment journalist. And we have Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik from the UNICEF Disaster Risk Office. So without wasting any further time, I'll hand over to the Honorable President, Press Club Kolkata, for his welcome speech.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. It is really a pleasure and privilege for me to welcome all the distinguished speakers and the participants. And I welcome and thank UNICEF representatives. Today we have both of them, Shucharita, our communication specialist, and Simanchal, who is the specialist in the area, which he is going to deliberate as an expert, and USP also for spearheading this project. I will not take much time because we are eager to hear three eminent personalities. Number one, I'm personally very happy that we have crossed the halfway benchmark of our 13-part series. So Press Club, which is otherwise known, is doing something for professional development, and that too collaboration with an international organization like UNICEF for a cause. These things give me pleasure. Number two, the topic of the day is very close to my heart. Climate change. Yes, all of us are, at least we can say, a little bit aware climate change, how important it is and how relevant it is to each one of us. And what is the role of the media? Media has to take a very, very important role, decisive role, proactive role, not only to create awareness, but to prepare the entire world to tackle this problem. I think this is one of the critical issues we are going to address. We have Professor Shelat. As a student of communication, I have always given 10 out of 10 to MICA because I consider MICA to be one of the professionally managed media education institute to cater to the professional needs of the people who work in the industry. And we are having somebody who is a specialist and representing MICA. So I'm very happy. Disaster management, disaster mitigation is another area of my personal liking. I have worked with BBC Project and I have worked with various state governments in disaster communication, disaster mitigation. And I am eager to listen to Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik's presentation. And journalists need to be aware of disaster, climate change, disasters created by climate change, and how to address. This is one area I believe that if journalists are made aware, they can be very useful in further informing in a correct perspective to the common people so that an awareness and a mitigation takes place. My dear friend Jayanta, who has my mentor, teacher, friend, philosopher, and guide as far as environment communication is concerned. We, the journalists, rate him at a very high esteem for his dual effort of being an educator in the university level, in environment science department, in journalism and mass communication department, for being a practicing journalist writing on a day-to-day basis in a national daily on the issues of environment, climate change, and allied areas. And he has represented our country to various international fora of environment reporting, global climate change summit, and etc. So he has international exposure. But above everything, he's the one who wants to share his knowledge, expertise, acumen with other fellow journalists. This is something which is rare in a journalist. Journalists are trained to be doing exclusives, doing scoring over others. but he's the one I have seen always bothered about how to create an awareness and how to create an army of informed soldiers for the crusade on environmental issues. So, with this, I will just failing in my duty if I do not welcome Ms. Sucharita Bordhan, who has been the main inspiration of this 13-part webinar series. We welcome you, ma'am, and we are eager to welcome you to Kolkata physically. We all are. That's going to be our New Year gift, and we look forward to work with you as a professional body from Press Club, as an international body working for the cause of development, cause of children. We welcome you, and we would get further opportunities to welcome you on board on various such joint initiatives. I believe that somewhere in the world, somebody is creating these resources, somebody is spending his time. So obviously, we should make full use of it. And Dr. Umashankar Pandey has been an extremely efficient, competent, capable, committed person to spearhead this project. I welcome you, Professor Pandey, and welcome you all. Let us get a very fruitful discussion from where we can take away a lot of things to implement in our daily lives. Welcome to all, Professor Pandey.
Thank you so much, sir, for your welcome speech. I now have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Sucharita Bordhan, the Communications Specialist, UNICEF Office for West Bengal. She's the person who has conceptualized this entire series in 4 subtopics, and today we are discussing on climate change. And to the person behind the show, to the person who's responsible for making it possible. Ms. Sucharita Bordhan, for your remarks on the topic.
Thank you, Dr. Umashankar Pandey, for such a warm greeting, and also Mr. Snehashish Shur, whom I refer to as my mentor also. It's such a pleasure to be able to introduce this discussion on climate change, because I have personally been involved in a bit at the start of my career in the development sector. And UNICEF has at its core climate change and action, especially because children are also affected by any climate change issues that happen. And as you know, that UNICEF is mandated to work for children. And all over the world, we are taking various initiatives to see how children, as part of Article 12, in their rights under the UNCRC, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, are actually allows them the right to participate in discussions on climate change. I am also particularly remembering my guru, Tushar Kanjilal, whom we called Master Mashai. I was groomed, while I was being groomed into the development sector, much of my initiation happened in the Sundarbans mangrove delta. And I'm very emotional now, because I remember Master Mashai explaining to us at the banks how the land, disappears to form land on the other side. And reclaiming land on another side after it disappears or is taken in takes that much more time, leaving people landless for quite some time. And I have seen myself personally in a gap of 6 months, the land where we were standing at a previous meeting when we were discussing with Master Mashai was no more. It was in the center. I have an image where Master Mashai says the land where you and I had spoken is now in the middle, as you can see there. It has disappeared. That was my initiation into climate change. After that, there was embankment collapse every year in the Sundarbans. I have seen human chain standing and trying to build the embankment in a day. Otherwise, they would be struck by disaster again. Since my initiation in development was in West Bengal, I also remember the cyclones in Dinajpur. Today is a very important day for me also, because where I worked in my previous assignment in Rajasthan, Rajasthan did not have an experience of hailstorm. To see an entire desert, brown, dusty desert filled with ice, that entire visual itself was extremely strange. And people were taken, by surprise suddenly, and farmers had to go through a lot of time before they could again utilize their land for agriculture. So while I'm still not initiated much, my colleague Simanchal Pattnaik has years of experience in disaster risk reduction and climate change. I am here to learn from all of you, especially also Mr. Jayanta Basu, whom I think the media fraternity knows very well. And I have had the privilege of knowing him through my media colleagues in Rajasthan. So I think I'm very, very happy to have you here. Simanchal, of course, is my colleague, but Dr. Manisha is also one of our, what should I say, our travelers, co-travelers in the entire journey of development journalism. How can I forget you? I have such high respect for her. Also because she's so clear in her vision on development journalism in terms of what are the journalistic issues and what creates the scope for social change at the grassroots. I have my sincerest appreciation for all the distinguished speakers here today, and I thank Press Club for taking this wonderful initiative along with UNICEF. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your introduction, and thank you for your kind words. So we are having 3 presentations today. We'll start off with Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat, and then we'll go to Mr. Jayanta Basu, and finally to Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik. Each presenter will be presenting for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. I now have the privilege of introducing Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat, one of the most respected academicians in our country in this field. She's a professor in communications and digital platforms and strategies, and she's also the chair of Center for Development Management and Communication, MICA. She's taught and worked as a media consultant and researcher in India, Thailand, and the United States. She has a PhD in mass communication from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA, and in education from the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Her research addresses communication for social change, young people's media cultures, new media, civic engagement, transcultural citizenship, media literacy, and gender. She has led several capacity building programs for non-profits, various state governments, corporate sectors, and international organizations in communication and information management. She's also the editor of the respected Journal of Creative Communications, published by MICA with Sage Publications. She's worked as a consultant, advisor, resource person with various social sector organizations such as the Gujarat Energy Development Agency, Center for Environment Education, SEWA, the Adani Foundation, Mahila Samakhya, the United Way of Baroda, UNESCO, and UNICEF, among others. Awards and fellowships include the Soviet Land Nehru Award, Shastri Indo-Canadian Faculty Research Award, the Salzburg Seminar Fellowship, and the Tata Fellowship for the Study of Contemporary India. She is also associated with the International Association for Media and Communication Research in a big way, and she was the chair of the Media Education Research section till very recently. We are delighted to have you present here, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Can we have my presentation on the screen? So thank you very much for this invitation. I'm so delighted to be here. And of course, working with old colleagues like Uma and Shucharita. And thank you so much, Snehashish, Kolkata Press Club and UNICEF for this invitation. And I'm glad that you consider MICA as an important institution in media education. And I'm delighted to say that the Center for Management, Development Management and Communication was specially started by MICA so that all the talent and expertise that MICA has in strategic communication and media education can be shared more widely with the society. So very happy to be here. Let me just start my presentation. Yeah, so I want to ask you that most of us who live in large housing societies or apartment buildings, if we ever tried calling a meeting of all the residents of the society to discuss what to do when there is a fire in the building or any house in the society, how many people would turn up, do you think? Not many. I mean, you'll have a tough time going to everybody's place and say, sir, please, meeting start ho gayi hai, ma'am, 10 minute lagegi, zyada time nahi lagega, right? But if there is a house in the society that is on fire, you will see that in 2 minutes, the entire society is out there watching the fire. Am I right? So that is exactly the way it is with climate change communication. What we observe that, climate change is a slow, invisible process, and its progress is not that interesting and visible to witness. It's not, so visually compelling or impactful, like fire or floods or famine. And the consequences are also very, very complex, right? So the consequences make very good stories. As soon as there is a flood, there is a famine, there is a hurricane, there is a volcano. Yes, they make great stories, but they make such visually compelling stories that people sometimes even forget to connect these with the slow and ongoing process of climate change. And that is one reason where climate change communication is one of the most difficult things to do. So I agree that media's role is very, very important here, because media is a bridge. So media connects science on one side, policy on one side, and people on the other side. Also, the way media will frame the story, like whose argument media will privilege, right? How will media define the climate change problem? How will you frame your stories? All these things have a very powerful impact on the overall discourse on climate change and also on action and policy, right? And how will public activism on climate change will take place is also shaped by media in a big way. Media would also influence that in the entire discourse, in the policy, in the action, what importance will give to the marginalized groups of people whose plight sometimes are totally invisible to those in power, because those people are not in our radar, so we don't think about them. So media also has this important role to bringing these marginalized groups, acknowledge that these people are also important, and climate change has the worst impact on these people. I don't for 1 minute say that media's role is easy. There are so many challenges for media, and then I have my journalist colleagues here and they might talk more about it. But climate change is not an easy area to cover. On one side, media have to inform, to analyze, to actually motivate people to change their lifestyles. And it is a tall order because, when your stories have to compete with cricket on one side and Bollywood on the other side, I mean, how do you make your story so compelling that people forget Bollywood and cricket and pay attention to your stories? So, for example, how do you make the Paris summit as interesting as IFA Awards? Or the fact that India has already succeeded. In fact, we have overachieved the target for greenhouse gas emission control. I mean, it's a major victory, but do we celebrate it like we celebrate even a small cricket victory, right? So people who cover climate change has a really, really difficult task ahead. There is also increasingly, challenges of low budget for investigative journalism, shaky support for the management, and also, the short attention span of today's readers who are fed on listicles and bites, and climate stories tend to be complex. So to keep attention of people in, treating a climate story in the complexity that it deserves is also very challenging. And that's why my task today is not to give any advice to media, because I know that it's a tall order, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to point out to some very unique characteristics of climate change as an issue. And then I'm just going to ask you some questions as media practitioners, media teachers. And believe me, again, I'm saying that if I ask myself any of those questions, I'm not saying that I will be confidently answering those questions in a strong yes. So again, I'm, coming from a position of an ally, like somebody who understands the challenges and not as a preacher, who is here to tell you that this is what you should be doing. So here are like 5 characteristics of climate change as an issue and my 5 questions. To the media, of course, because it's important for today's topic, but also to the larger society. So here are my questions. So climate change is a long haul issue, Climate change is not something that you can, address it today, do a few stories, and you can easily see the impact or solutions, right? Especially when you see climate change in perspective of our growing aspirations, our growing energy demands, our craving for all the luxuries that, the global West is enjoying. That if at that time you want to convince people to reduce their energy use or be sustainable in their use of resources, it's not an easy thing to do. So you are not going to see any impact immediately of your stories, right? You will also realize that if you can convince ordinary people to change their lifestyles, there are still like industry, corporate, governments who themselves act, not in benefit of sustainability. So my question to you as media persons involved in this area is that, are you equipped to not get tired? Because burnout is very easy. And I think we have practicing environment journalists here, so I don't need to say more on here. We'll hear more from them. But you need grit and you need a belief that your work still matters, even if you don't see any immediate result. So that's my first point. The second unique characteristic is that climate change is an extremely complex issue. When you look at climate change, you realize that the factors that affect climate change, as well as their consequences, they touch upon, cultural, political, economical, scientific, biological, so many areas, and not just individually those areas, but that intersection, that interaction with each other. Are you trained or equipped to handle this complexity? There are also, I would say that, a small step might benefit one group, but in the long run, it may damage other groups. Do you have the foresight to see that between what is happening short term and then connecting it to the implications in the future? Right? Some arguments are valid, what we hear in the discourse. Some are completely a myth, right? There are so many arguments which lack evidence, and sometimes there is evidence, there is so much evidence that it is confusing. So you need to train yourself to avoid oversimplification and embrace complexity. See, and I can't claim to be, have worked as a journalist for a long time, but what little experience I've had, and then the experience of teaching journalism, I see that, the deadlines are tight. It's very natural to go for, quick actions, something that you can very attractively put in your story. And in all that, sometimes we keep complexity aside and we go for oversimplification. So you have to be trained to avoid oversimplification if you want to bring out the complexity. of this issue. Okay. Okay. So the third point is that stakes are very, very high. So, action needed to address climate change at a higher level. I'm not just saying that switch off your light and turn off your water tap kind of actions, but really high level actions. They may ask for big time sacrifices. They might ask for sacrifices from the industry, from political parties, from those in power, and they're not going to be happy about that, right? There will be resistance because there are profits at stake, there is power at stake, and greed can drive people to any extremes. You must have observed that greenwashing, what we say, faking that you are sustainable and environmentally friendly, is a very powerful people who are actually indulging in activities that damage the climate. Believe me, you are sure to make some really powerful enemies. There will be pressure and there will be threats. So that is the third question to you, that are you prepared to make powerful enemies? Because without that, the stories would be superficial, goody-goody, more like a public relations kind of stories. Okay. My fourth point is, and this I've witnessed in most of the development-related communication work that I do, whether it is immunization or maternal and child health, the benefits are abstract and very, very far away in future. You can't see them. Right? When we say that, your third generation people will have this or that, if you sacrifice certain things now, the discomforts are real, right? And the benefits are far away and abstract. So it's very difficult to convince people to change their lifestyle when this is the case, because people usually like to see something concrete, something, the evidence, which they find compelling, that, oh, look, this is the benefit I'm getting, so I better change my lifestyles. But when benefits are so abstract and far away, it's not going to be easy. So my question is, therefore, your stories have to be experiential, making that emotional connection with people. Your stories have to be accessible. The language you use have to be really accessible, because you have to translate science and policy into people's daily lives. You have to bring that connection, So if you hone your craft to make your stories experiential and accessible, that's the only way you can connect common people to the issue of the climate change. And the final point that I want to make is that climate change is surrounded by controversies and polarization. So there are climate advocates, there are climate contrarians, and there are climate skeptics. And each of this group has very strong ideological beliefs in the stand that they are taking. Both groups might have, some compelling arguments to make. Both groups may have some valid points. So as a media person, you have to make sure that you are not blinded by one ideology. Of course, you have to take your stand. I don't say that journalists can't have an ideology and can't take a stand. But it should not be so that even if you are seeing real evidence on the other side, you ignore it. You're not willing to take it into consideration. And something I've always believed in, and that was probably why it took such an enthusiastic interest in our center, is that I find that critiquing is very easy. Criticizing anybody like governments, policymakers, teachers, it's very, very, very easy. Making policy and taking strategic action is the hard task. And it is especially hard when it is an issue like climate change, that, something that you do, a policy you make, or an action that you take might be really beneficial to one group in short term at least, but might, sort of affect the power and privileges of some other groups, right? So there is no perfect solution. So I would say that more than just criticizing what people are doing, when people are making some attempt, they are taking some action, make sure that you help them strengthen this. And most importantly, that you keep your balance and not get, swayed by one side of arguments. So these are the 5 points I want to ask you that would will you not get tired? Will you embrace the complexity? Are you willing to make powerful enemies? Can you really keep your balance? And can you make powerful stories that connect with people? I just want to end here with a thought that, see, ultimately, what will decide the fate of how we will be affected by climate change will be decided by our priorities. What priority we give. So as media, I would just say that, do you know that environment journalism is the second most dangerous journalism area after war reporting? If you go on the net and look at how many environment journalists are killed every day, especially those who report on mining, deforestation, agribusiness, you will be shocked. But, and with all due respect to Bollywood stars and the, job they do, I mean, the kind of frenzy we create, at the death or suicide of a Bollywood star, media, as well as the society, like months, we're so emotionally involved in that. And yeah, if you do feel so emotionally connected, go ahead and do it. But if we shed even, 1/100th of our tears when an environment journalist is murdered? Do we even know a name of one environment journalist, forget global, from India, who has been murdered just because he was doing or she was doing the duty of making sure that our future generations have sustainable future? So I would like to leave with that I think all of us media people and the society as a large, media educators, we have to get our priorities right. And I would end on this note. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the presentation. And as Mr. Churita Bardhan said in the beginning, there is so much clarity in everything that you say. Thank you again, for this presentation. For the benefit of everybody, I just want to remind again that all these things are recorded and put up on our YouTube channel, and it will be available for researchers, scholars, and everybody else after the webinar is over as well. I'm also delighted to report that there are some very distinguished colleagues in the, are participating in today's session. So I just want to call out some of them. There's Professor Dr. Madhuba Bokshi. She is the Dean, Department of Media Sciences, the Heritage Academy. She is there in the audience. We have Professor Dr. Basu Jirli. He's from Banaras Hindu University, the Department of Extension Education. We have Dr. Sapna Nayak. She is from Mysore University, the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We have a journalist friend from Kashmir, Shaukat Dar. He's there. There's Dr. Hina Raj. There are so many other colleagues, Dr. Tanushri Mukherjee and Meenakshi Mishra, Professor Shottobroto Paul. Thank you everyone for your support. It's very, very encouraging to have you all amongst us, for these sessions, and that has been such a big encouragement for us all. Now I'm delighted and honored to introduce Mr. Jayanta Basu, our next presenter for today's session. He's a specialized environment and climate journalist and has been covering international climate summits regularly since 2009. Mr. Basu is associated with the Telegraph, Anand Bazar Patrika, and also contributes regularly in various national and international media platforms, including audiovisual and digital media. Mr. Basu is a faculty in the Calcutta University and also director of the non-profit Environment Governed Integrated Organization. The initials are NGO, ENGIO, and he's been working long in environment, climate change, public health, and communication-related projects for the last 2 decades in collaboration with the government of West Bengal, various government agencies, UNICEF, World Bank, DFID, among others. And as Ms. Bardhan said at the beginning, he's such a well-known name in the field of environment journalism that we always look forward to listening to him. So the stage is yours, sir.
I'm just trying to get the presentation board.
Yeah, it's there, sir. Can you just stop sharing, sir? I have shared it from the...
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop sharing, sir. I have shared it from the system. Yeah, just a second. Yeah, it's there, sir.
That's not mine.
Yeah.
That's not mine. That's Simanchal's, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just a moment.
And when I'll be doing the presentation, somebody has to kind of back and forth. Perhaps I'll sometime do the slides back and forth. So
can you share, sir? You can share yours. I'm sorry, I got the one wrong. You can share your own, sir.
It has to be shared from the top of the screen, no? Just after, beside the sound button. That's the place.
Yeah. Turn screen share on. Right, sir.
Okay. Your entire screen is, that's it. Oh, I shall have to open it up.
Can someone share it? Yeah, it's there, sir.
Is there?
Yeah, we can see on the screen. You can just, if you can put full screen, it'll be better, sir. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it is okay.
Okay, thank you. On the outset, I'd like to thank Press Club and UNICEF for kind of organizing this. I think organizing climate journalism based programs is a bit of a rarity still in the country. And I really would like to thank personally to Press Club and UNICEF for doing this. And I know that since Snehashish, my very good friend, has started responsibility of Press Club, he has been trying a lot of things. And before even this program, we have done various orientation workshops on environment and climate journalism. And I believe this is also going to contribute a lot to the journalist as a whole. And I'm really, really very thankful and very happy to be part of this exercise. And I would also like to thank Dr. Umashankar Pandey. Is a very good friend of mine. I have not met Ms. Bardhan personally, but I have heard a lot about her. And Simanchal is also a good friend of mine. We interacted a lot about Sundarban. So it's a good, it's like a get together actually. And I'm very, very happy to be part of this exercise. Now, very quickly, I'll be taking around 20-25 minutes to go through. Let me share a few things about the climate journalism, maybe the gender issues, health, and Sundarbans, of course. And in fact, on the outset, I was so becoming nostalgic having heard Sucharita ji talking about Tushar Babu. And I was remembering that 10 years back in 2009, 2010, I and Tushar Babu jointly first convened the India-Bangladesh meeting on Sundarban's climate change. And that was the time when I could bring the India's environment minister at that point of time, Dr. Jairam Ramesh, and Bangladesh minister Hassan Mahmood Saab to Kolkata to first talk about the climate change components of Sundarban. And in that particular program, Tushar Babu was the president and I happened to be the secretary. And that movement is still going on, the transboundary movement. So I was remembering those days when Sucharita ji was talking about Master Mashai and Tushar Babu. Okay, very quickly, this the 4 photographs, cut aside the Eiffel Tower, that is a very common one. But these 3 photographs are very interesting photographs. One with the hope with the question mark, one kind of a movement from Greta Thunberg, and last third one is the Sundarbans. Very interestingly linked. You know that when Copenhagen conference completely flopped, the next year the conference was held in Cancun, and the Copenhagen loss was trying to be regained. And then this particular photograph went all over the world, hope with a question mark. And this is a photograph I took from my windows in the hotel. That's a wonderful, wonderful way to show the world that the hope is still there. But the hope will not be retained unless we do it right now. We can't wait till it's too late. We can't wait till it's too late, and that's the point. Is so. This is a poster from the famous. There's a poster from the famous that Greta Thunberg show in Madrid last year, 2009 December, when he said that don't wait until it's too late. And third one is the Moshuni Island. Many of you must be knowing, some may not be knowing. Moshuni is perhaps the most distant island in Sundarbans, just beside Gangashagar. And Moshuni is one of the most threatened islands, along with Ghodamara. It's already thousands being affected, being uprooted, and it's going to be a huge impact. And despite everything, the islands like Ghodamara and Moshuni is sinking due to climate change, despite contributing virtually nothing to that climate cauldron. So let me go to the next slide. Slide is not changing. Why?
On your right side, you will see a slide here.
Yes.
Okay.
Very quickly. In fact, I couldn't get hold of one particular item that's being printed today. Many of you must be seen by this time that the Christian Aid has come up with a study yesterday late evening, 11 o'clock UK time, 4 o'clock today morning Indian time, which says that Amphan, the climate Amphan, the cyclone Amphan, which hit the Sundarbans and Kolkata last May, caused the highest displacement in the world in the 2020. That's not a good news. And if you look at this that some of the news items, it's very interesting to find out that how politics, economics, science, and everything combine together. I was hearing the last lecture and was so aptly put out that the need for kind of a combining all of this when you are going to talk about climate change as a journalist. The left one is of the Moshuni Island. I just talked about it. The center top is the one after the Paris Agreement, a copy of mine from the Paris. The right, center one was the Copenhagen one. Then the Paris on the right, on the blame on hype and an hour-long call, an out-and-out political copy. Then an edit in Anand Bajar on climate change in Sundarban. And then the final, the right side bottom was the one from the Madrid. So that's the, if I now go over to basics, that how climate journalism is different from other modes. Very quickly, we need to understand that climate journalism is one of the quickest growing, along with the environment journalism. And there are certain commonalities with other modes, but if you look at it, you will find that there is issues of kind of the passion, the networking, the confidence, the good information library, all are courage, definitely, all are so much important in climate change. And more importantly, you need to understand the issue both horizontally and vertically. I'm not saying that other journalists need not know these issues, but in climate change or environment journalism, you need to link those dots. So when you find that somebody is cutting a tree beside your house, just that news won't be enough. You need to link that. You need to link that with the local economy, local politics, local mafia, local administration, and everything. So this horizontal and vertical connect in climate journalism is so much important. And it always has a much longer shelf life. When I was doing that article for Telegraph yesterday night, after the embargo was lifted on this Christian Aid report, I had to dig out my old reports. So it has a long shelf life. It's not really armchair journalism, and as a campaign is very, very important. Now I would like to respond to a few of the queries that Manisha ji so aptly pointed out in the last presentation. That number one is tired. I think no journalist worth of his salt will get tired if he or she can do good journalism. I love if I love the work, I love the work. That's it. So that the point of tiredness won't be coming. And oversimplification, yes, a very important point. oversimplification does happen, but you need to understand environmental journalism or climate journalism. You need to aware of a lot of issues, a lot of agendas. So oversimplification may happen if you are not aware of this whole gamut of things. And powerful enemies, you do have powerful enemies, but here I have a point. Enemies are there, and there's no doubt that environmental and climate journalists are one of the group of journalists being most affected in the last few years throughout the world. But you need to be fair as a journalist as well. If you are not fair as a journalist and you do certain things and perhaps sometime below the belt, that doesn't augur well for you as well. So if you are fair, I can criticize any political party under the sun, and if the political parties feel that I'm fair on my job, I think I can take it through. Now, this is a very interesting slide I find in the last Madrid climate conference. I think any climate communicator needs to understand it. That what are the major issues? You'll find that there are issues of that people not knowing, they're not aware about the climate issues. So you have to do the outreach. So it's basically a prescription as a communicator, not necessarily only a journalist. A journalist also is a communicator, but not necessarily only the communicator as a journalist, not as a media communicator, but also as somebody who is a social communicator. So if you have lack of quality information, what you will do? If you have untailored information, what you will do? So this clearly gives you a picture and a pointer how to go about with this environmental journalism. Now, I'm not going to kind of spend time on this. These are all known, that how the whole atmospheric temperature is going up along with carbon dioxide. We all know how the sea level is rising. But what is important to know, that Sundarbans in the southern fringe of West Bengal is having now 8 millimeter per year sea level rise, which is almost, I would say, close to triple to the world standard of around 3.3 or likewise. So it clearly shows that how vulnerable Sundarban is. And being in Kolkata is about 100 kilometers from Sundarban, we are no less vulnerable. So if Sundarbans cannot be saved, we will not be saved as well. We'll be talking about Sundarbans a bit afterwards. This is an interesting map which shows that if the global sea level rise happens about a feet throughout the world, how the world will look like. The red areas will go. So look at the Indians figure. Look at the India's map. All these politicians kind of fighting for their pie in the political field will just have to limit themselves with Maharashtra, with I believe Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, and likewise all the rest part of India is gone almost. So now that brings us the international platform. You know, there is something called IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. Now, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, about 3,000 scientists across the world, they get hold of all the data and kind of use that data to remind the policymakers that how they should go about countering climate change in future, in immediate future, in long-term future. Now, I'm just kind of take one line of it, that there will be catastrophic impact if decisive actions to limit global warming below 2 degrees centigrade are not taken quickly. It's believed that before the Industrial Revolution, the temperature rise was natural. But since the Industrial Revolution, there are anthropogenic emissions. So if we need to limit the global temperature rise within 2 degrees centigrade, preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade. So that's where the whole ball game is, and that's where all the political executives around the world are working together. So that's AR5 report is quite authentic report, but it's also a point of concern. Now, and this is a very interesting point as well, that all is not well. We need to produce 80% of the electricity from carbon sources by 2050, but it's not that everything is unwell. It states very clearly that actions to fight climate change are affordable if they are taken right now. If you don't take it, then you are going to have some problems. And that brings us the kind of point, I think Simanchal, Dr. Pattnaik will talk more about it, about the disaster part. But there is always the question, what's the problem? If climate is warming up, let it be warmed up. What's the problem? The problem is right here. If you look at the comparative figure, this is a 15 years decadal figure. I took consciously the USA figure, because USA is known as one of the countries with high socioeconomic position, and that's resilience to counter any climate change. Resilience is so much important to combat climate change. Look at the 80 to 95 figure and 96 to 2011 figure. It has almost doubled. The number of disasters being doubled. The amount being spent is doubled. And in fact, in 2020, I just saw that yesterday evening report, 150 billion was spent on climate change across the world. And that's a conservative figure. That's an insurance figure. Actual figure is actually higher. And India and China, Bangladesh are so much equally impactful. Quickly to India's position. India is one of the most vulnerable countries, no doubt about that. It could cost India 2.8% of the GDP if it continues business as usual. And already India's temperature has risen around 1 degree centigrade, and it will rise to 2050 by 2 degrees centigrade. So it can actually impact everything under the sun. I don't need to talk about heat waves. I don't need to talk about agriculture. Everything under the sun is going to be impacted. And impacts we have already shown. This is a photographs of, again, Sundarbans, and after Amphan. I had been in Sundarbans at least 20 times after Amphan. And you have to be there to understand and share that how bad is the situation on ground. And we have seen not only Sundarban, but from Kerala, from Uttarakhand, from Kashmir, from Chennai, everywhere you'll find how the impact has gone. Very quickly with the climate negotiation. You all know that in 1997, Kyoto Protocol, in Kyoto city of Japan, the first agreement was signed, but it didn't really give us much. Then Bali, the fueled hope, common but differentiated responsibility came. But then series of climate conference, and I had been to all of them from Copenhagen to Madrid. Nothing really happened. Politics has won over the people need. So we are still in for a very, very difficult time. And we really don't know what is going to happen in Glasgow in 2021. Glasgow was supposed to happen this year, 2020. But as for COVID, it has been shifted to 2021. Now, in Kyoto, we agreed that the industrialized countries will cut the emission by 5%. It didn't happen. Instead, it increased about 11%. So that's all about the industrialized and so-called developed countries have done for the climate change. That's the historical responsibility. Then comes the Copenhagen. That was my first international bid on climate summit. And I was there, I would say, fortunate enough to be that night when this historical 18 hours long continuous meeting was held in Copenhagen, and the Copenhagen flopped completely. And officially, UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that it was an imperfect, hastily done political agreement. So Copenhagen flopped. Then there was a series of agreements, series of summits, and then in Paris 2015, we call it a landmark event. In the Paris, all the countries agreed that they would be cutting down their emission, and the global temperature will be limited within 2 degrees centigrade, preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade, and we need to shift for a zero carbon economy. As a journalist, we have to cover all those issues. There are so intricate things which we need to cover. We need to understand the technicalities. We need to understand the linkages, how we can add the dots between economy, politics. That's very important. When Donald Trump came into the picture, the whole political equation got changed. And now with Biden coming, perhaps it will change for the better. So that's Paris. Paris was a baby step towards the right direction, not really a big step. And then finally to the Katowice and Madrid, the last conference. And we can see that still a lot to be done. The world is on course to a 3 to 5 degree temperature rise. And take it from me, if it is even 2 degree temperature, we all need to keep ourselves within a phrase. We need an air conditioner for each and every person in this planet if they want to survive. That will be a different world, much worse world than right now we are having the COVID, putting this mask and all this. That's a different world, even worse than COVID situation. So that's where the movement came. That was historic Madrid, where lakhs and lakhs of people under the leadership of Greta Thunberg joined the movement. I was there and I saw people coming all over the world joining this, and those are some indicators of that. So these are the critical climate change issue. Dr. Pandey, how much time I do have? Dr. Pandey?
How much time do you want, sir?
I think if you can give me around 10, that should be fine.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, great. I thought that these are some important issues I need to share with all of you. So critical climate issues, as a journalist, we've been covering. The critical climate issues right now are this. We need to talk about those emission gap. If you look at the Paris Agreement, whatever being committed by various countries, if you take them on their face, and if you feel that they will be kind of commit, they will be doing their commitments, still the world is far short than it should have been in terms of emission cut. So now this new word has come, ambition gap. And emission gap and ambition gap. So we need to raise our ambition. Each and every country need to raise our ambition. But here is a rider. The country like India, where still millions are not still having electricity, they cannot right now stop using fossil fuel. It is the historic responsibility of the country like US, the country like Australia, the European Unions, who have been kind of hijacking the sky from us. They're hijacking the emission that what we are supposed to do. So they need to be kind of consider their historic emission and do a lot of things about it. And now this particular, the number 4 is loss and damage. We are talking about the future. What will happen to the people? What has happened to the people who have already suffered? So this loss and damage is a new element along with adaptation and mitigation in the climate negotiation. And now our Sundarbans, I keep on harking back to Sundarban. That's an area I work, and that's an area I think we all need to concentrate in our country. The loss and damage is something we need to focus at. We need to focus it on the peaking year. When the world will peak its emission and then go down. That's a very important point to understand. So these are important issues. Climate security becoming a major issue. Who has ever thought? I was part of a global group called Climate Politics 2050 in Germany. It happened, I think, in 2019 or 2019, I believe, where we discussed about various facets of climate politics. And then the issue of climate security comes. If Bangladesh, whose sea level rise is higher than India, goes down underwater, millions are supposed to come to India. How India, even on security scale, is going to kind of work on that? So there are so many issues. What about the city and regional voices? The country, the cities like Kolkata. I did a documentary film called Kolkata 2070 under German consulate, and where Soumitra, our so much revered actor Soumitra Chakrabarty, who died a few days before, he was the main protagonist, and he said this, that how we are all going to survive. So we need to ensure that city like Kolkata, Dhaka, Delhi, all need to survive, and that's where the whole issue needs to be discussed. And there is economy, there is market mechanism, all are coming, and health is a major issue. I will dwell a couple of minutes on that. Before that, I just show this is the WHO. There was a WHO study in 2019 in Madrid. I'm just kind of just referring this. Maybe in a different platform we can discuss at length. It clearly shows that how the countries are still so underprepared to counter climate change from the health perspective. Climate change is critical because it's affecting your health. But unfortunately, that part of the climate change is hardly being discussed about. So you can see that even the countries who are talking about health are not taking it seriously. The high proportion of countries not taking it seriously is so high. And you can also see that how the figure after 2015, after the Paris, it went up. The 20 you can see who are doing the health-related climate programs or planning, but that has dwindled to number 5 in 2018-19, shows once the Paris blacked out and now this COVID, it is becoming even worse. So that's what the question is, because climate change is going to affect, and that's, I think, the UNICEF's role is also coming with the picture. Climate change is going to affect the poor people most, because the poor have the minimum resilience, so they will be most affected. So that's an edit I did for Anandabajar. Well, Paris is fine, but what about the West Bengal? And that takes me to last 5-6 minutes about Sundarbans. And you all know the Sundarbans. I just told that how Amphan. And if you can notice that, Bulbul and Amphan, two huge cyclones, extremely severe cyclones, had hit Sundarban within 6 months. Actually, the landfall happened within 30 kilometers, either side of Moushuni Island. And I think it has never happened anywhere in the world. With so much high intensity cyclone, having landfall within 6 months, within 30 kilometers. That's how vulnerable Sundarban is, both Indian part of Sundarban and Bangladesh part of Sundarban. Now, Sundarban is also very vulnerable simply because its climate change may be new in that respect or that scale, but Sundarban always faces in weather impacts. And it's a rubber band syndrome. I call it a rubber band resilience syndrome. You stretch a rubber band, it's stretched and comes back. But when on the existing vulnerabilities you add on climate change, it kind of comes to the point of being snapped. That's where the Sundarban right now is. And it is having both long-term impact and immediate impact like storms and cyclones, and the long-term impact of sea level rise. And I don't know how many of you noticed that Sundarban in last 6 decades has lost 210 square kilometers, which is bigger than the size of the city of Calcutta. So an area bigger than Kolkata was lost in last 6 decades, and in the recent decades, it has actually increased. And if you take India and Bangladesh together, on Sundarban, 13 million people depend directly or indirectly. And these 13 million people are more than actually in a global kind of many countries are not as big as that. And in Indian part of Sundarban, it's a World Bank study I'm referring to and I was part of, it says that within Indian Sundarban, there is about 5 million people. Within that 5 million, about 1.5 million are at the doorstep of devastation. Anytime a major disaster can sweep them away. So that's the scale of vulnerability we are talking about. And if you look at this map, that this is the dark green portion is the reserve forest, and the violet portion is that terminal transient point. The people living in between the green line and the violet line are at the extreme zone, the transition zone boundary and the core zone boundary. People living there, around 1.5 million, are really at great danger. Very quickly, as I said, that if you look at the figure of Indian and Bangladesh Sundarban taken together, it is twice compared to Qatar, Jamaica, and Lebanon, and it's bigger than Bolivia, Cuba, Portugal, Greece, Sweden, Hungary, and likewise. Unfortunately, as well, it is being split between 2 countries. We seldom talk together, and you can compare here. This is a figure. This is a chart from UNFCCC. I added the Sundarban part. You can clearly, I don't need to discuss it at length. You can see how Sundarban is much more vulnerable than most of the areas, most of the island countries in the world, as being referred by UNFCCC. So that underscores the importance of working on Sundarban perhaps together by India and Bangladesh. Now, that brings me, and these are the displacement figure we have talked. I just would like to come to the Sundarban's climate-triggered health impact. There are so many impacts. There are common impacts, but the most important is the last point, the relative risk ratio. That is the ratio of exposed to non-exposed children is 0.96, basically implying the child who has experienced climatic shock had 3 times more risk of developing gastrointestinal diseases compared to a child who has not. So there are so many other data in Sundarban which shows the huge impact of climate change on the people at large, and particularly the children and the elderly. And I'll come to this last slide, and we'll spend a couple of minutes on this. Having understood the importance of working together, both India and Bangladesh on Sundarban, myself, along with my colleagues in WWF and others, started a movement, as I said, in 2009. And then there's a long story. To cut the long story short, we had political meetings. I always thought myself, there are 2 ways of going about it. One, we need to influence the decision maker, and we need to talk with the decision pushers. The media is the decision pushers, and the academics are the people who provided the decisions, the evidences, and the political people take the decision on those. So what we did, we organized a transboundary India-Bangladesh meeting between the Indian scribes, the Indian journalists, and the Bangladesh journalists. Snehashi was very much part of it and really a huge help to the whole process. And also we took not only the mainstream journalists, but also the regional journalists. We take all of them together. Then we took the input from them and then discussed with the political leaders. The Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, sent a team of about 8 MPs And we in West Bengal had teams sent by our Chief Minister, Mamata Banerjee, with her permission, a team led by our Speaker, about 6-8, that's an all-party team. It was not a one-party political team, it's an all-party team that discussed among themselves. And to take it continuing on the media level, World Bank supported a media project just to make sure that how Sundarban's vulnerability, the collective Sundarban's vulnerability, can be raised at the global level. The way we talk about Amazon, we don't talk about Sundarban. We need to. So we took that project, and I am very happy to share with all of you that more than 1,000 articles come all over the world, including, you name it, and we had it in all the major media platforms around the world. And that really now Sundarban is talked about the global level. And I expect, I am having discussion with various friends of mine in UK High Commission and others, that in coming Glasgow conference, Sundarban will be discussed at great length. That we are all trying to. I really do not know that what will happen, but that's we are all pushing on. And I'll end with this particular photograph. This young girl, I don't see names, a child. I met her, Snehashi may be remembering, I met her in a village called Shunada in Sundarban area. And this particular house is built beyond, almost at the lap of the river, beyond the embankment, because they don't have the money to build a house inside. Originally, the embankment was beyond the house, but ILA broke that down, and now it's a new embankment. And this child, every time a high tide impacts Sundarban, 50% or more than 50% of the house gets inundated, and this child, if she has an emergency or her family have an emergency, has to swim from this house to the mainland. And I am talking about a child who is hardly 100 kilometers from all of us. So as a journalist, as a climate journalist, as an environment journalist, I think it's upon us to bring forth these stories. These stories are not in the headlines. These stories are not discussed in the press clubs. These stories, press clubs, I'm saying press conferences, these stories are somewhere in between. So as a journalist, it's our responsibility to bring it up, to take it up and show to the world that what they should be doing about this. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your masterclass, and it's always such a delight listening to such well-researched presentations delivered with so much of passion. And thank you again for this. And as I've said at the beginning, this will be available on YouTube for all our researchers and scholars and media persons. Now I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik, the Disaster Risk Reduction Officer, UNICEF Office for West Bengal, our next panelist. And as we've said, this will be a 20-minute session. Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik has more than 20 years of experience in disaster risk reduction, humanitarian response, and WASH program, water sanitation and hygiene programs at subnational, national and international levels. He has a distinction of dealing with United Nations agencies, both the UNDP and the UNICEF, and international funding agencies like the DFID in various states like West Bengal, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Manipur, and Bihar, especially in the field of disaster management, energy response, and WASH. He's had an international exposure with Action Aid International in South Africa region as an advisor, and in the emergency preparedness and response in the Zimbabwe country office, and also extended his support to Ethiopia and Kenya country offices for developing resilience building strategy for disasters like flood, drought, and food insecurity situations. Currently, he is leading the Risk and Resilience Program of the UNICEF West Bengal Field Office as a program officer since 2016. He is an MBA from North Odisha University, and he also has a PG diploma from the Xavier's Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, Odisha. So the stage is all yours, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Umashankar, for giving this warm welcome. Thank you, Calcutta Press Club, for giving me this opportunity. I hope I'm audible.
Sir, you are audible, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's a great opportunity for me to be part of this this webinar where most of the eminent personalities from different media groups are present. Uh, First of all, I would like to explain that I'm not a climate change expert. Basically, I'm from the disaster management experience in different with different organization in different state, also in other African countries. So I would like to give some information which are concerned about the climate change issues. Anyhow, Jayanta has already mentioned very important points about Sundarban issues, about the global climate frameworks and policies, politics, so on. He's having very vast experience in this field. And also, Dr. Manisha ma'am mentioned about clearly the climate change characteristics, what the media need to understand in 5 different questions. So my presentation is almost covered by both of the predecessors speakers. I would just like to highlight, if you can go to the next slide. So as a disaster management professional or a DRR professional, I believe in certain actions because unless we act, we cannot actually reduce the risk of climate change or any other natural disasters. So that is what I experienced during my career since last 20 years. So you can see, just a moment, let me open it. Whatever the information I'm going to present, these are based on certain reports, so certain assessment carried out globally or locally by the government or by the international protocols. So I just like to highlight that when we say climate change and the impact on our society, so what does it mean? I think the participants present here it very well. But still, I would like to highlight certain issues like the climate change risk has different scenario in different region. And the report which was published by the intergovernmental panel for climate change is a global platform. So they used to release the global assessment reports which explain about different situation and different impact of climate change on different region, and they explain that the Asian region is basically experiencing more number of extreme events. Those are flood, cyclone, and it leads to severe damage to our infrastructure, livelihood, and settlements. So this is the significant impact we can see and realize in our region. Then also increased risks of heat-related mortalities, heat waves, and also it leads to some health-related issues, as all of us know. Then it also increase the risk of drought. So there are many evidences within our country, even within our state, that because of this change of climate over a period of time, also impacting on our livelihood. Next, please. Yeah. So then what we understand when we say climate change impact in India. So basically we term it increase in the temperature. So how we know about there is an increase in the temperature, and that is basically the scientific analysis says based on the previous 1 decade or 2 decade data they analyze, and they by using different models, scientific methods, they analyze and then they publish the reports that how much temperature has been increased over a period of time, and then they also explain the projection that what will happen after 10 years or 20 years, what will be the climatic condition, what are the extreme events will occur which will affect our economy and our social life. So all these informations you can see I have prepared based on the certain reports, and this is basically based on the Assessment of Climate Change over Indian Region, a report published by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. And what they say is that India's average temperature has risen by around 0.7 degree during 1901 to 2018. And similarly, the recent 30-year period, the temperature of warmest day and the coldest day of the year have been risen by about 0.63 degrees centigrade and 0.4 degrees centigrade respectively. So when we read all this information, it actually realizes the impact of climate change. So why I'm showing all this information? Because we also need to understand what are the changes taking places in different regions and different areas, and based on that, how it impacts our social life, economic life, and the geographic condition, how it is being changed. So unless until we know all this information, so it will be difficult really to convince ourselves, and then also advocate with all the policymakers and the lawmakers or even the influencer. So I think we just need to have some knowledge and information about these impacts, and which we can get it from different these reports and the publications which are available in the public domain. We can go to the next slide. So basically, there is a temperature rise, there is Indian Ocean warming. So the sea surface temperature is increasing. That means it also leads to no more number of cyclone form in the sea, and then the impact which we have already seen recently. Next, please. So these are few facts which I don't want to explain it further, because Jayanta has already explained it with certain examples in Sundarban. So we realize actually the impact of climate change has already been felt since years. So I just wanted, can go next, please. Then there is a change in rainfall. Then there is increasing trend of droughts in many areas. Next, please. The climate change also have sea level rise, which already explained by Jayanta, that some of the island which are part of the Sundarban is now no more, because there is a rise in the sea level, and those are already sunk. Next, please. Yeah, next. Then tropical cyclones is already increasing. We have seen in the recent few years the number of cyclones, the frequency and the magnitude of the cyclones has been drastically increased, and it has impact on all those coastal states, and West Bengal is also one among of them. We have recently seen the impact of Amphan. Maybe similar other events will be happening in near future. So what kind of preparedness, prevention and mitigation measures we are taking, that is actually matter. Next, please. Yes, change in the Himalayan, because typically West Bengal, the geographic condition is so that from the north we are in the Himalayan range, and then south we are in the coastal range. So anyhow, we are very much vulnerable to this impact of extreme events, which are going to increase because of this climate change impact. Next, please. Yeah, you can see the West Bengal condition. I think many of us knew about it, that how West Bengal is mainly vulnerable to different type of disaster, climatic disasters like cyclone, flood, flash flood, even also the drought condition. You can see the top portion is the hilly region, and then we have alluvial zone in the center. Then the coastal belt is in the southern part, whereas red laterite zone is in the west part of the state. So that means we are surrounded by many climatic disaster situations, and it is very much evident that how it impacted our economic and social life, and what is the damage to the infrastructure over a period of time. Next, please. If we can skip all these slides, because I don't want to spend more time on this, rather on the actions. Uh, Please go ahead. Yes. Here, what I wanted to say that what are the consequences because of this temperature rise or sea level rise or no increase in the rainfall, that we are going to face more and more physiogeographic what we can say, meteorological disasters like the landslides, floods, drought, storms. These are going to actually increase in those areas. And what we lose all the development gains in those areas. If we have frequent flood, frequent cyclone, then whatever the development gains, whatever the strategies we developed in those areas, it will totally damage. You can see there is a massive destruction to the crop. Then the entire area inundated. There are marginal people who are living with very basic facilities, so they lose their livelihood, and it is very much difficult for them to recover from those stays. So although government provide them the assistance, but it is not actually fully helpful for them sometimes, because they have to rebuild everything. So in disaster risk reduction, that's why we say no, build back better. If we face type of extreme events every year and we lose our basic infrastructure and basic services, then how should we put our effort to build it better? So build back better. So when we talk about the recovery, reconstruction after any disaster, so how should we build it better so that we can withstand those disasters? That is what we call the resilience building among the communities, or the adaptation to the climate change. We know that it is a long-term affair, and there should be a continuous engagement at the community level, as well as continuous advocacy at the policy level. But still, we need to actually think about alternatively that how should we think about our development, considering all those disaster or climate risks in our mind. So then climate change disproportionately impact the poorest, which has already explained by the previous speakers. And then it also further deepening the existing inequalities. So it is already there in our society. There are marginal group who are staying with very minimum basic facilities, and when disaster occur, it further lost their livelihoods. So how the inequities is increasing? It is already existing, and then further it is aggravated by the disasters. Then mostly, if we talk about the climate change, so the sectors which are affected are basically the health, water, agriculture and power, transport, forest, like that. So each of these sector has to actually think about the climate adaptation or resilience building strategy. In West Bengal, we have state action plan for climate change, which has been updated again in 2017 to 2020, which talks about that each and every department has a responsibility while planning for their development program, considering all those disaster risk and the climate risk. So government is already having that plan, but how the coordination mechanism is established, how the monitoring mechanism is established to ensure that all those plans have been implemented and there are certain results and targets are achieved over a period of time. So all those information related to West Bengal, I brought it from those West Bengal plan of action for climate change, which is released by the Department of Environment Department. You can see there each and every department, each and every sector which are vulnerable to these climate change issues. They have explained their roles and responsibilities and the action to be taken, keeping in mind the climate change projections. So these are a few things we need to actually consider while advocating for the climate change issues. Now, next slide, please. In UNICEF, when we work with different sector, we have one concept like risk-informed programming. That means UNICEF basically focus on 5 sectors, as all of you know: health, nutrition, child protection, education, water and sanitation. And while programming all these sectors, we have one cross-cutting issue, that is the risk-informed programming. What does it mean? That means when we are planning for any health program, we need to also understand what are the risks, in which area we are going to implement what activities or what programming we are going to do, and how these particular area are vulnerable to different climatic or environmental issues or any disaster profile. And based on that, what should be the adjustment in our programming. So that is what we call the risk-informed programming. We basically focus on the disaster and hazard profile of that area, and then based on that profile, we do certain analysis that how children especially are vulnerable and are more under risk from different hazards. And for that, if we want to continue certain services, continue certain programming, so what kind of strategies we need to adopt. So that is what we call risk-informed programming. And the first step, as I said, for the risk-informed programming we do is the analysis, just like we have done the child risk impact analysis. So bringing the data from various sectors, we analyze that what is the current situation of malnutrition, what is the current situation of infant mortality, maternal mortality, what is the current situation of child protection issues on the ground. Then we combine it with the disaster profile, that which are those areas are affected by disaster and how these issues, sectoral issues, are further aggravated because of the disaster situation. So we do some kind of analysis, although we have not done very scientific analysis for the climate change, but we do some analysis for the natural disaster. And based on those analysis, we plan certain activities along with our existing programs and program activities, that how should we promote the disaster risk reduction into that. So the next step is mainstreaming the disaster risk reduction, that each sector and each department should plan for the disaster risk reduction, which actually talks about not only the preparedness and response part, also the long-term recovery and the mitigation part. So how the disaster risk reduction can be mainstream in all the programs and all the sector, so that we can actually address to some extent for reducing the risk of natural disasters. Similarly, resilience building among the communities, that is one of the priority area, because we know a community are the first responder for any event, whether it is related to climate change or natural disaster. So how we can build their resilience capacity, what is the current situation, how they survive, and then further how we can enhance that capacity. So that also we work by through the community-based disaster risk reduction processes. So that basically talks about the participation of the community in the whole planning, mapping and risk analysis process, and then prioritizing the activities which actually help them to reduce certain risks from different programs. Then also how should we promote no low carbon emission technology. So nowadays we are using different technologies in our development activities, but we should be very much conscious about those technologies which are no having more carbon emissions. So how should we be conscious about those things? So that is also one of the area. Then conservation of energy and promotion of renewable energy sources. So this is also one of the initiative to address the climate change issues. Then air pollution is another major issue in many of the metro cities, including Kolkata. So what are the strategies we are taking to monitor the air quality, indoor air quality, outdoor air quality, and what are the mitigation measures we are taking, how we are educating the communities about air pollution issues, and how should we advocate with the policymakers. So these are the areas also we are looking in our programming. Waste management, solid and liquid waste management, how we can promote it at the community level, how we can promote it at the institution level like schools, Anganwadi centers, and the health centers. So that is also one area where we work. Plantation and protection, of course, this is not the area of UNICEF, but normally in climate change, it's not about only the plantation we should promote, also how we can protect those plants which actually help us to know from the climate change impacts. So these are the few areas what we consider in the risk informed programming. Next slide, please. Then coming to the children, because in UNICEF, basically our focus is on the children, how we can help the children to understand the climate change related issues and how they themselves can be prepared because they are the future and they are going to face maximum consequences of the climate change. So the first action we take is how children can be part of the process, the climate change campaign or climate change advocacy, and how can we build their knowledge. So there are few things actually affect them, like when the natural disaster increases, so obviously because of the climate change, then obviously they are more threat to their life, and maximum chances of the children to separate from their parents, from their houses, which is a major concern. Then in your diseases because of the this temperature rise or different type of natural disasters like flood and cyclone. So the rate of diseases are also increasing. Vector-borne diseases are increasing, which basically affects the children on a large scale. Then there are also water scarcity, which also compel the children in very worse conditions. Then food security, which also leads to the malnutrition of the children. So all these issues actually we consider when involving children in the climate change issues, and we try to build try to work in those sectors and build their capacities, build their knowledge about the programming, so that they can also raise their voice. So this is one of the diagram through which, next please, through which you can see how children are directly or indirectly impacted by the climate change impacts, climate change risk, and then what sort of strategies we need to take to actually prepare them for all these issues. Next, please. So a few actions again, I would like to say that first, as I said, the participation of the children through various platforms, how we can build those platforms in the schools, in the communities, so that children can learn from their own activities, and they can learn from various sources, media sources. Then children and young people can play a key role in addressing the climate related risk by promoting the environmental sustainable lifestyles and setting example for their communities. There are many evidences where children have involved in the plantation process. Also, they are helping the schools in doing the waste management, also maintaining the sanitation and hygiene in the schools. Next, please. We have also introduced, not in West Bengal but in other state, we have introduced the green school. I think there are many other organizations who are also doing similar exercise in the schools. So it is under the school safety program. We try to promote this green school concept, where actually children can learn about the environmental issues and what action they should do to make their environment sustainable. So for that, we used to train them on disaster risk reduction, then analysis of different hazard and their risk to their life, and also certain practices which help them to protect from various harmful events. So you can see here. Next, please. So the green school concept actually are having a major 4 step, where children learn about the sanitation, how to maintain the sanitation in the schools, then how to do the waste management on different solid and liquid waste management in the schools, then water conservation and energy conservation. Through this process, we try to build their knowledge and their understanding about all these activities and its impact on the building the sustainable environment. Then all these activities are through the school disaster risk reduction plan. So they do the analysis within the schools, identify the risks from various natural disaster as well as the climate conditions, and then accordingly they fix the responsibility of the students, the teacher and the parent, that what action they should play within the school to make their school disaster free. So these are few things we are promoting in the schools. Next, please. So this is one of the example. Then coming to the last point. So although these points are very generic, which I thought to share with you with my own experience, that what the media can play the role in this entire climate change aspect, that is promoting the risk informed programming, what I have said, the risk informed programming initiatives which are carried out in different areas. Then also different knowledge sharing, because we have many information, many reports published, but how those reports can be translated into local language and very simple messages which can be spread among the common peoples. So that can only be possible through the media. Then mass awareness, of course, we can create the awareness among the general people. Also advocacy on certain issues, because we have all the facts and figures, then based on that, how can we advocate with the policymakers and the lawmakers, also create the awareness among the people so that they can raise their own voice. Then how we can share the success story, as Jayanta has shared one story. Similarly, there are many other stories where children, adults and even youths contribute to these environmental sustainable practices or disaster risk reduction practices. How those stories can be built in and then shared with the larger community, so that people can understand the impact of climate change and understand the actions to reduce the risk. Then media can also play a role of monitoring, because there are many schemes, programs which are implemented by national and state governments, And as I said, there is a state action plan for climate change. How those plans are being implemented, who is monitoring that, then what are the results coming out of those activities. So those can be monitored sometimes by the media, and it will be very much influencing the policymakers. Then use of social media, which is nowadays very much popular, where we can reach to each and every communities, each and every people through the social media. So the information which we got from various sources, how it can be converted into simple messages and shared with the most vulnerable and marginal communities. So that also we can do through this media. I think these are a few things I wanted to share from my experience. As I said, I'm not the expert in climate change, but whatever I learned during my experience practicing this disaster management work, that I have shared. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pattnaik, for such a well-researched presentation. And there have been a few questions from the audience. I'll just read out all of them at one go, because we've already overshot our scheduled time by around 10 minutes. So this is just a very small roundup of the questions that we've received from our participants today. So there's a question on the rising sea level and its impact on the mangrove ecosystem and your opinions about that. So this is just, these are general questions. And then there's a question by Nivedita. She asks, as a journalist and social communicator, how can we educate people who are not able to analyze what's coming in the future? So basically, this is a question about the uncertainty in the risk. So just to remind everybody that we had another session on risk communication before that, and we also prepared a presentation on risk communication and has been shared with people here. Then there's a question by Shotobrata Paul. He asks about the Indian media not giving priority to climate change issues. And finally, there's a question by Ayushi Ali about why only certain areas of the city are more, or stress is more given on cleaning up that part compared to the rest of the city as well. So any final comments, starting off with Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat, and then Mr. Jayanta Basu, and finally Mr. Pattnaik, before we go back to Mr. Snehashi Shur and Ms. Sucharita Pardhan.
Well, the only thing I would say that, as I said, it is difficult for people to register the impact when it is abstract and it's shown far in future. Like if we say that the temperature will rise so much in 20 years, it's very difficult for people to put it in experiential terms. So that is where, you have had, I think, Professor Pandey seminars on storytelling and risk communication. So I think the craft of storytelling, where we can write stories that can actually make people understand the seriousness of the issue, that's what is really needed. Is it really?
Yeah, so can we go to Mr. Jayanta Basu, please?
Exactly what the exact question is? Will you please repeat it?
The impact of sea level rise, and what is your opinion on how it will impact?
Okay. Very quickly, I think I discussed it. The sea level rise in Sundarban. These are not imaginary figures. These are figures of the government of India being presented to the Parliament as well. I remember that in West Bengal MP Shogato Rai posed a question in Parliament last year about the comparative sea level rises across India, and it is an official figure from the Ministry of Arts Sciences that Diamond Harbour area has the highest sea level rise in the entire India. So that clearly sums up the situation. And if you have to understand this dynamics, sea level rise is also being coupled with the settling of the islands. Sundarban Islands are young islands. So sea level is rising around 8 millimeter per year, and 4 millimeter is the kind of the land is subsiding. So effective we call it relative sea level rise, is about 12 millimeter. So that clearly shows the impact, and it affects everything. It affects, as I said, erosion, larger than Kolkata being submerged. The mangrove ecosystem being affected a lot. I think somebody asked a question about mangrove ecosystem. Mangrove ecosystem has impacted a lot, but we have to understand that mangrove plays a very important role in countering the threat to the hinterland of Sundarbans, because they to the initial buffer to the storms of the cyclones. So that's, I think, the situation out in Sundarban on sea level rise and mangroves. And very quick to the second question, that India media, as the Nivedita's questions about environment and social communication, how make one understand. That's a challenge, Nivedita. As a journalist, we need to find out the way how we communicate. I think Madam was talking about the storytelling. When I talk about a lady in Sagar Island at the fringe of Bay of Bengal saying to me that I have shifted my house 6 times, 5 times before the marriage and 1 time after marriage, that's a story in itself. So you have to, there's no point in we have to understand these stories, and we need to mainstream. Often as a journalist, I feel we take climate change and environment separately. It's not really the correct way to go about it. Climate change has to be mainstreamed with the environmental communication, environmental journalism, and as well as also the lifestyle human stories. When we can pick these 3 together, you get the story at your hand, and then people will see how the story goes. So that's it. And I think Indian media not giving priority to climate change. I think a lot needs to be done more, but I won't say nothing is happening. I think last decade or so, there are more and more stories. But those are mostly the stories on the impacts once the disaster being happening. And you have to understand, with the technology being improving, now not many people are being actually being killed by the disaster. Even the Amphan killed about 128, if I am right. So I just concluded this 15-second story that about 5 years back, or maybe less than that, I was called by somebody in Sundarban saying that, Dada, there is a huge disaster out here. 5 villages completely washed out, and there's nothing in the media, so nothing is happening. So I went there with my photographer, and I found it's really true that 5 villages washed out. I came back and spoke to the minister that what has happened. He had no idea at that point of time. He called up, he asked his PA to call up the regional head, and he said, yes, 5 villages being washed out. Then the minister said in front of me that why the report has not come to me or the secretary. He said, sir, nobody died. This nobody died phenomena is the bottom line where both the politicians and the media are being struck. We need to go beyond this kind of casualty fact figure. Then we are having the story in our hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Pattnaik, do you want to have any final comments before we go to Ms. Shailendra Bardhan?
No, I think Jayanta has already explained it fully, so I agree with him.
Thank you so much. And as Professor Manisha Pathak-Shelat, so rightly pointed out, and she has noticed that as well, a lot of our discussions have led to other kind of presentations, other webinars, and even materials that we have produced. And after the data journalism series, which started from UNICEF Rajasthan to risk journalism and now storytelling, this is a part of the background brainstorming we have on a regular basis with Ms. Sucharita Bardhan and our press club president, Mr. Snehasis Shur, and our team here. So there's a lot happening in the background, and we are having sessions on storytelling also in the future as well. So thank you again for so much of food for thought. And this is the second in the climate change series. We'll be having another 2 on climate change. Then we've had on COVID-19, and we had on child rights, and we also had on development communication. So just day after tomorrow, we have one on development communication. Thank you again, and I'm delighted to hand it back to Ms. Sucharita Bardhan for her final comments.
Thank you very much once again, Dr. Pandey. And I think, like all times that I've mentioned, whenever we had the development journalism sessions also, these webinars are not just webinars for the sake of discussion. That is what is most important to me. The takeaway, as my colleague Simanchal said, is action for us also. It's action otherwise in terms of climate change, but it is action for us to take it forward. And when Professor Manisha says that media is a bridge between science, policy, and people, you see, she's already defining where and which stakeholders need to be part of this entire initiative. And I think all of us know that despite various efforts, and I'd like to also mention that Mr. Jayanta Basu, an eminent environmental and climate change expert, reporting also in, I think reporting is other kind of profession, if I can rightly say, because he's such a stalwart in his own area of work. He very rightly pointed out that there is a lot of work already being done, and climate change, there is report on climate change. Unfortunately, report and stories happen only with casualty, perhaps. But I'd also like to reiterate that this means that, like health and many other issues, it means that there has to be much more preparedness among media professionals, because there is a lot of knowledge building as well. If we do not learn, we cannot report. And of course, we have to interweave it with skills such as storytelling, which has already been discussed. I will not, take too much of time, because we've crossed our limit today, and I can see the enthusiastic discussions that have actually led towards this. I have a lot of takeaways, as I said, from the IPCC, which we have discussed at length, from Greta Thunberg, which brought so many children together. It was a global phenomenon of sorts. Suddenly, politicians across the world were thrown towards this kind of a challenge, if we can say, that we have to sit up and take note of climate change and its impact on our daily lives, so to speak. And I remember once after the hailstorm, when we went to visit farmers, they said that we cannot understand what has struck us, because our fields are no more prepared for farming, for 2 cropping seasons. And our livelihoods have been affected. And the same story happened with the salinity in Sundarbans, because the land was not prepared for cropping patterns for some time. So you see that apart from health, as even Simanchal mentioned, and Mr. Jayanta also mentioned, about its various impact and critical climate issues that we have to all take note of. I think Simanchal, while pointing out about risk-informed programming, has also indicated some of the responsibilities that I have, because I am a focal point for advocacy and media. And yes, there is an important role that I also need to play to bring and discuss this with not only prominent and eminent media persons from the state, but also at the district and sub-district level, because that is when we will also start, kind of increasing and bringing in more people to understand climate change and to kind of discuss about climate change, and also write on climate change, which is so important, right from the field. Reports need to come right from the field. And the perspectives have to be beyond only the issue. It also needs to bring about people's understanding and preparedness, and therefore probably minimize the vulnerability. And with that, of course, my heart and the core of UNICEF is with children. Green schools and smart green schools. We have, we have in Rajasthan, we had eco warriors, like in some other places, we had other children working and actually bringing a lot of critical issues even before the chief minister. And this is important. We have to use all our resources, bring all stakeholders to create this kind of consciousness and awareness together. Probably one of the most important issues that is striking, and it is there. It's no longer, we cannot be in denial anymore. It's hitting us today, and we have to kind of bring ourselves to work on it. I, from my part, can definitely say this is not going to be a webinar series by itself. We will start taking actions on it in terms of our roles, as far as both, looking at climate change in media, and also with our policymakers and political leaders. Thank you very much for such an engaging discussion.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shushrita Bardhan, for your comments. I would now hand it over to Mr. Snehasis Shur, Honorable Press Club President, for his formal vote of thanks. So your audio is muted.
That's the most regular problems which we face. Thank you, Dr. Pandey, for initiating this and referring to a formal vote of thanks. Yes, as someone representing the host organization like Press Club Kolkata, I'm required to welcome and give a vote of thanks. But I'm a journalist first, and then I would definitely, in spite of thanking them, I should acknowledge their participation. I should appreciate their involvement, and I should recognize their commitment. That's one part. I do not want to spend much more on their or on thanking them because we don't have much time. I know they are committed by themselves, they are competent by themselves, and we are grateful that you have enriched our endeavor of this series that has really been enriching. The issues were identified by the first speaker, Professor Shelat. Issues were dealt in details by my colleague Jayanta, and the mitigation process and our doables have been discussed by Mr. Simanchal Pattnaik, the disaster management expert. We know all these that the information has to be generated, to be disseminated to the journalist, as Professor Shelat has rightly said, that we are the bridge between the policy and people. Very, very well said. So first, information needs to be uh, brought to this group of people who are representing media. But an awareness has to be created too, which we are trying to do. Jointo has been trying a lot, and I believe that with Shucharita's presence in West Bengal, with our little bit of participation and Jointo's commitment, we'll be able to create a different group of people within media. Whether advocacy journalism is required or not, that's a different issue. But as has rightly been said, that it is impact oriented. Why should we leave it as an impact oriented, whether the casualty is there or not? We need to aware people, we need to aware the stakeholders that look, this is going to happen and we are going to do it. We are there to create, we are there, as Shucharita has rightly said, that the earlier project has resulted to policy change. And our success is, what is the success of development journalism? What is the success of doing advocating climate change? If some action is generated out of our reporting, then we will be the happiest person. And obviously the ones who are writing and presenting, but we will be the happiest person because we have created that from background. So it is our commitment that information first, then identification of information, and then storytelling. More stories to surface in the mainstream media, in alternative media. The space should be filled up with this message. That is very important. And as I said, that we are creating a repository out of this webinar. It's not only standalone, and there will be all PowerPoints available, all lectures available, or additional resource materials available. And I'll conclude by saying, with Shucharita's presence and Jointo's continued effort, and Dr. Pandey's willingness to participate in anything and whatever little engagement we can do, we'll take this forward further. This is our hope, and with this positive note, I thank all the eminent speakers for making it so engaging, so enriching, and you see, identifying that what we are required to do, we have to do. It's not only the next 3 generations after the suffering will take place. Once we get to know and reiterate it, that in last 60 years, the whole of Kolkata city, the area more than Kolkata city has gone into the sea. So then what is the issue of erosion? We need to address this right now. Otherwise, what kind of journalism we are doing it? So this awareness, that sensitization rather, is very important. And I also thank the participants. I have been going through this, their questions and inputs. They have been the pillar of our success. Without participation, no discussion is effective when we are trying to come to our result. So thank you all. And with this future hope, we conclude that in the year to come, we have suffered a lot, but the passing year, but in the next year, we'll try to create some structured system so that we see the surfacing of this kind of messages in the mainstream and as well as alternative media. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Year has not ended for our webinar series. We have another one on Wednesday. It's on infodemic fact-checking and challenges of social media. So that will be on 30th December, same time, same place. I just take another opportunity to thank three very important people behind the show. Our webinar coordinator, Ms. Shreya Deb, our IT coordinators, Mr. Devan Bhaduri and Ms. Sanjali Ganguly, and our creative head, Mr. Shekhar Bajpai. Thanks again to all the participants, apart from the names I've taken, Dr. Monika Verma, Agnibha Bhaumik from KIT University, Bhushan Kankal from MICA, is a research scholar there, Zakia Rahman, Shubhushachi Burman, Nitul Tiwari, Dr. Kusum Lata, Professor Hina Tiwari, Professor Shottobroto Paul, and everybody else, students from Surendranath College for Women, and our classmates, Ms. Nirupama Ghosh and others. Thank you very much for your participation. We've had some very engaging participation here. Looking forward to your joining us again for the 8th webinar this Wednesday. Thank you again for your participation. Looking forward to meeting you all on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. same place. Thank you again to our resource persons.
Thank you.
Thank you.